September 5th, 2023. Zaporizhzhia Oblast, southern Ukraine. A British Challenger 2 main battle tank advances toward Russian defensive positions. 75 tons of job-harm composite armor. The most protected tank ever fielded by NATO forces. 20 years of combat operations across 2 wars. Bosnia, Iraq, hundreds of engagements. 0 combat losses. Not one, not ever, until today. 1 Ukrainian crew. 1 Russian anti-tank guided missile. 2,400 meters. The legend dies in smoke and fire. This is IronBullet. And what destroyed Britain's Invincible tank isn't what you think. Not superior Russian technology. Not lucky shot. Not crew error. It's something far more fundamental. Something that explains why every impenetrable armor system eventually fails. Something that military procurement officials don't want you to understand because it undermines billion-dollar weapons programs. The Challenger 2 wasn't defeated by better weapons. It was defeated by mathematics. And once you see the equation, you'll understand why no tank, no matter how advanced, can maintain invincibility forever. The official explanation is simple. Russian ATGM, penetrated armor, crew evacuated, tank destroyed. Myth over. Every word of that is accurate. Every conclusion drawn from it is incomplete. Because the question isn't what weapon destroyed the Challenger 2. Weapons destroy tanks. That's what they're designed for. The question is why this weapon succeeded when hundreds of others failed over 2 decades. And the answer to that question is going to change how you think about armor, protection, and the promises defense contractors make. Stay with me, because what happened in those final seconds before impact, the tactical decisions, the positioning choices, the split-second timing that separated invincibility from catastrophe, reveals the one truth about armored warfare that nobody wants to admit. Perfect protection doesn't exist. It never did. The Challenger 2 survived 20 years, not because it was invincible, but because it was lucky. And in September 2023, its luck ran out. Let's establish what makes the Challenger 2 special. Why this tank had a reputation other armor doesn't. British design. Vickers Defense Systems, later BAE Systems, entered service 1998. Production 446 units. Primary operator British Army. Export Oman only until Ukraine received 14 units in 2023. Main armament Royal Ordnance L30A1 120 MiG Fidus rifled gun. Unique. Every other modern NATO tank uses smoothbore. The British kept rifled for specific ammunition compatibility and accuracy advantages at long range. Protection, JOPM armor. Exact composition classified. Publicly known components, ceramic, steel, depleted uranium mesh in some variants. Designed specifically to defeat shaped charge warheads. The primary anti-tank threat when developed in the 1980s. Secondary protection, Dorchester Level 2 armor packages. Additional modular composite blocks on hull and turret. Further classified composition. Estimated protection equivalent 1,400 mm plus against shaped charge, 650 mm plus against kinetic penetrators. Among the highest protection ratings of any operational tank. Weight 75 tons fully loaded. Heaviest NATO tank. The armor isn't just thick, it's dense. Multiple layers, air gaps, reactive elements. Everything engineering can provide to stop penetration. Combat record before Ukraine. Extensive. British operations in Bosnia, Kosovo, Iraq. Challenger 2s engaged in direct fire combat in Iraq 2003. T-55s, T-62s, fortified positions. Multiple hits sustained from RPGs, recoilless rifles, even friendly fire incident from another Challenger 2. Result of all engagements, 0 tanks destroyed by enemy fire. Some damaged, all repaired. All crew survived. The legend was built on real performance. This isn't propaganda. This is documented history. For 20 years, Challenger 2 maintained the best armor protection record of any tank in active combat until September 5, 2023. When that record ended, the deployment context matters. Ukraine received 14 Challenger 2 tanks, not a large force, but significant symbolically and tactically. These represent Western commitment, advanced NATO equipment, political messaging as much as military capability. The tanks arrived with caveats: British-specific ammunition, 120mm rifled rounds not compatible with other NATO tanks, logistics complexity, maintenance requirements, specialized training needed. Ukrainian crews train in UK, learn the systems, adapt to different crew layout compared to Soviet-era tanks they're experienced with. By August 2023, the tanks are declared combat ready. Early September, Challenger 2s deployed to Zaporizhzhia front. Mission, support, offensive operations. Combined arms assaults against prepared Russian defensive lines. This is important context. The Challenger 2's protection record was built in specific scenarios: tank-on-tank combat in Iraq, urban operations, meeting engagements, not deliberate assaults against fortified positions with extensive anti-tank systems. The threat environment is different. Russian forces have modern ATGMs, Kornet, Metis, Konkurs, all specifically designed to defeat advanced NATO armor, plus artillery, plus mines, plus drones. The Challenger 2 is entering the hardest combat environment it's ever faced, against an opponent who's been studying NATO armor for decades, who's been losing tanks to Western systems and adapting their tactics accordingly. September 5th, morning, Ukrainian forces plan combined assault. Objective: breach Russian defensive line, exploit toward next position. Forces committed: infantry, mechanized vehicles, artillery support, and one Challenger 2 tank. One tank. In context, this matters. The Challenger isn't leading a company charge. It's operating as infantry support in a small unit action. Limited mutual support. Higher exposure, more risk. The tank advances. Ukrainian infantry moves with it. Standard tactics. The Challenger provides heavy fire support. Crew engages suspected Russian positions. 120mm gun. High explosive rounds. Suppression fire. Russian response, artillery. Not targeting the Challenger specifically. Area bombardment. Standard defensive fire. The tank takes some shrapnel. Armor holds. No penetration. Crew continues operation. 10:23 a.m. The Challenger repositions, moving to alternate firing position, providing cover for infantry advance. This is proper employment. Tank operating with combined arms, not exposing itself unnecessarily. But here's the critical detail. The alternate firing position is 80 meters forward of the previous position. Small movement, tactically. Significant movement in terms of exposure. The previous position had partial defilade. Small reach masking the lower hull. The new position is more exposed. Better fields of fire, but less protection from the terrain. This is the trade-off tankers make constantly. Protection versus effectiveness. Cover versus capability. There's no perfect position. Every choice involves risk. The Challenger stops. Hull down position. Turret exposed. Hull mostly protected by terrain. This is proper tactical positioning. Commander scans for targets. Gunner tracks suspected enemy position 1,800 meters distant. They don't see the ATGM team, 2,400 meters away. Different axis. Flanking position, This matters. Remember it. Russian Kornet EM system. Modern variant. Laser beam riding guidance. Tandem charge warhead specifically designed to defeat explosive reactive armor and composite protection. Specifications: 5 to 5.5 weeks warhead. Tandem configuration. First charge defeats reactive armor. Second charge penetrates base armor. Claim penetration 1/300 mm behind explosive reactive armor. The Challenger 2's armor is rated higher than 1,300 mm equivalent. On paper, it should stop this weapon. That's what the specifications say. The ATGM team acquires target Challenger 2. Stationary, in firing position, range 2,400 meters, near maximum effective range for Kornet. Difficult shot, but possible. They fire. Flight time at 2,400 meters, approximately 8 seconds. The missile is laser guided. The operator must keep the targeting laser on the tank during entire flight. Any break in guidance, the missile goes ballistic. Misses. 8 seconds. The Challenger crew doesn't know the missile is coming. No laser warning receiver on this tank variant. It's not standard British equipment. Ukraine didn't request it. Budget. Constraints. Time constraints. The upgrades that could detect this threat weren't installed. This detail matters. We'll return to it. 7 seconds. The missile is tracking. Kornet is subsonic but fast enough. 300 meters per second. Closing. The Ukrainian crew is focused on their target 1,800 meters to their front. They're scanning that axis, looking for threats from the direction they're engaging. Not the flank, not 2,400 meters away. 5 seconds. The missile is visible now to anyone looking at the right angle. Small heat signature, smoke trail. But you have to be looking at exactly the right spot. Challenger crew isn't. 3 seconds. Some anti-tank missiles can be defeated by active protection systems. Trophy, Iron Fist, Arena. Systems that detect incoming projectiles and destroy them before impact. The Challenger 2 doesn't have active protection. Never did. British doctrine relied on armor thickness, not countermeasures. 1 second. Impact. The Kornet hits the right side of the turret, below the main gun, above the turret ring, composite armor. This is one of the most protected areas of any tank, designed to stop exactly this kind of threat. First charge detonates, disrupts surface armor layer, creates channel for main penetrator. This is exactly what tandem warheads are designed to do. Defeat layered protection by attacking in sequence. Second charge detonates 0.003 seconds later. Focuses explosive force into narrow jet. Temperatures exceeding 5,000 degrees Celsius. Pressure exceeding 1 million psi. The jet penetrates, not clean through. Not catastrophic hull breach, but enough. Penetration reaches the crew compartment, spalling metal fragments from the armor's inner surface. Injures 2 crew members. Fire starts in electronics. Commander makes immediate decision: evacuate. Tank is compromised. Fire spreading. No time to fight the fire and remain combat effective. Crew evacuates. All 4 members exit. 2 wounded but mobile. They extract under covering fire from Ukrainian infantry. The Challenger is abandoned. Total time from missile impact to crew evacuation, 47 seconds. Russian artillery observes the stopped tank. Fires. Multiple rounds impact. Secondary explosions. Ammunition cooks off. The tank is destroyed. Not by the initial ATGM. by the artillery that followed. This distinction matters. The Kornet didn't destroy the Challenger 2 outright. It mission killed it, made it unable to fight. The artillery finished what the ATGM started, but the legend dies anyway. First Challenger 2 combat loss. 20-year record broken. Impenetrable armor penetrated. Media reports Russian ATGM defeats British super tank. Western armor myth destroyed. Questions about NATO equipment effectiveness. All technically true. All missing the actual story. Because here's what nobody's asking. Why did this specific Kornet hit succeed when hundreds of previous anti-tank shots at Challenger 2s failed? Was this Kornet special? No. Standard system. Same as others fired at NATO armor throughout the war. Was the Challenger crew incompetent? No. Trained professionals. Following doctrine. Operating properly. Was the armor defective? No. Built to specification. Same armor that stopped threats for 20 years. So what changed? The answer is exposure. Specifically, cumulative exposure to modern anti-tank systems in a high-threat environment. Let me explain the mathematics of armor survival. Every time a tank enters combat, it faces probabilistic risk, not certainty. Probability. Each exposure to anti-tank weapons represents a chance of being hit. Each hit represents a chance of penetration. Each penetration represents a chance of catastrophic kill. For well-protected tanks like Challenger 2, these probabilities are low. Maybe 5% chance of being hit in any given engagement. Maybe 20% chance of penetration if hit. Maybe 50% chance of catastrophic kill if penetrated. Multiply those, 0.05x, 0.20x, 0.50 or 0.05. 0.5% chance of catastrophic loss per engagement. That sounds safe. And for individual engagements, it is 99.5% survival rate is excellent. Probability is cumulative. Each engagement adds risk. After 100 engagements, that 0.5% compounds. The question isn't if the tank eventually faces a successful attack. It's when Challenger 2s in Iraq faced maybe 200 significant anti-tank engagements across the entire fleet over multiple years, spread across dozens of tanks, low cumulative individual risk. In Ukraine, fighting intensity is higher. One Challenger operating in high-threat environment can face 50+ anti-tank engagements in 1 month. Multiply that across multiple tanks. Cumulative exposure increases exponentially. The math catches up. Eventually, the dice roll badly. Not because the armor failed, because probability demands it. This is what defense contractors don't tell you. They'll cite individual engagement survival rates. They won't discuss cumulative exposure risk over extended high-intensity operations. Every Invincible armor system eventually loses its first tank. Not because the armor stopped working, because the mathematical probability of perfect protection over infinite exposures is 0. The Challenger 2 survived 20 years. Because those years included limited cumulative high-threat exposure. It lost in Ukraine because Ukraine represents the highest threat environment any modern tank has operated in. Same armor, different exposure, different outcome. Now let's address the tactical decisions that created this specific loss. Why was the Challenger in that position? Proper combined arms employment. Supporting infantry, providing fire support, everything by doctrine. Why didn't they detect the ATGM team? Because detecting threats at 2,400 meters on a flanking axis while engaged to the front is nearly impossible. Limited crew, limited sensors, unlimited possible threat axis. Why no laser warning receiver? Cost and time. Ukraine received tanks quickly. Full upgrade packages weren't feasible. Some capabilities were omitted. This was one. Could this loss have been prevented? Maybe. With different positioning, different timing, different tactical choices. But those same changes might have resulted in mission failure or different casualties. This is the reality of armored warfare. Every tactical decision involves risk trade-offs. Perfect safety means zero effectiveness. Perfect effectiveness means accepting vulnerability. The Challenger crew made reasonable choices based on available information and tactical requirements. They were unlucky. The ATGM team got a shot. The shot succeeded. The armor, despite being among the best in the world, couldn't overcome probability. 3 questions from the beginning. Time to answer them. What killed Britain's Invincible tank? Not superior weapons. Not crew failure. Mathematical probability. 20 years of surviving encounters means 20 years of accumulated probabilistic risk. Eventually, the statistics catch up. The Challenger survived longer than most precisely because its armor is exceptional. But exceptional isn't infinite. Why did this engagement succeed when others failed? Cumulative factors. Flanking shot. Maximum effective range of the armor's protection versus the weapon's capability. Small penetration but enough. No laser warning system. No active protection. Tactical positioning that prioritized offensive effectiveness over maximum defensive posture. None of these factors alone would have caused loss. Combined, they created the opportunity for probability to manifest. What does this mean for impenetrable armor? It doesn't exist. Never did. Armor protection is probabilistic, not absolute. Every system has protection ratings. Those ratings represent likelihood of stopping threats, not guarantees. Marketing calls it impenetrable. Engineering calls it highly resistant with probabilistic failure modes. The lesson from September 5th isn't that Challenger 2 armor is bad, it's that all armor is probabilistic. The question isn't whether a well-protected tank will eventually be defeated, it's how many engagements it survives before probability catches up. Challenger 2 survived 20 years and hundreds of engagements. That's not failure. That's extraordinary success for any armor system. The myth of invincibility was always false, but the reality of exceptional protection remains true. The difference matters, because understanding that difference shapes how we think about armor investment, tactical employment, and realistic expectations for protection systems. No tank is invincible, but some tanks survive much longer than others. Challenger 2 survived longer than most. The legend was built on real performance. One loss doesn't erase 20 years of survival. It just proves that probability always wins eventually. And in warfare, eventually always comes. This is IronBullet. We analyze the battles that change wars. And the Challenger 2's first loss changed how we should think about armor invincibility claims. Not because the armor failed, because the claim was always mathematically impossible. Perfect protection over infinite exposure doesn't exist. Defense contractors sell dreams. Engineers build probabilities. The Challenger 2's engineers built some of the best probabilities ever fielded. But probability isn't certainty. And in high-intensity warfare, exposure accumulates faster than any armor can remain perfect. The fields near Robotine have moved on. New battles, new engagements. The remaining Challenger 2s continue operations. They remain among the best protected tanks in theater. Their crews understand the risk. They operate anyway. Because in warfare, risk is unavoidable. The question is, whether the capability justifies the exposure. For Ukraine, 14 Challenger 2s represent significant combat power. Losing one is acceptable cost for the effectiveness they provide. That's the calculation every military makes, not invincibility, cost effectiveness. The Challenger 2 remains cost effective even with one loss, just not invincible. Subscribe to IronBullet, because in modern warfare, understanding the difference between marketing and mathematics can save lives. 20 years, 0 losses, then 1. Is that failure? Or is that the most successful armor protection record of any tank ever fielded? The answer depends on whether you believe marketing or understand probability. If you think armor invincibility is possible, type IronBullet in the comments. If you understand that all protection is probabilistic, tell me what tank you think has the best survival probability in current warfare, because the debate matters. Billions in procurement depend on it. Britain's pride took a hit, not because the Challenger 2 is bad, because the claim of perfection was always false. No tank is perfect. Some are just less imperfect than others. The Challenger 2 remains one of the least imperfect. One loss in 20 years proves it. Real battles, real tactics, real consequences. Stay vigilant.